Hey everybody, so after my last video I had somebody on my Discord ask me directly how I did this. They want to do tutorials, so that's what this video is. We're going to talk about displacing on a cylinder, and it's not bad. It's a little bit more straightforward than you might think, so we're gonna make this. So let's get started on that. I'm just going to start a new project, and this is going to be a tutorial video. So I'm going to go slow and call out everything that I'm doing, but remember that on YouTube there is that little gear icon that says go faster, Joe. So go ahead if you want to hear me. I promise you I get faster if you listen to me at 2x speed. All right. So let's add a cylinder. I like using Shift A for that. Mesh cylinder. And on this one, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Well, not so much cheating, but I'm going to go ahead and use the dimensions for this one. 32 vertices is fine. The radius. Okay, let's talk about the radius. This thing is going to have a bore down the middle that is supposed to be 3/16 of an inch. You know what, just for the sake of simplifying things, I'm going to say let's just make that 5 millimeters across. Let's just do it this in metric. And then it's going to have a 1.6 millimeter outside diameter that's going to go all the way around. So its radius from the center is going to be 2.5 plus 1.6. So let's grab this cylinder. Let's add another cylinder again. And so its radius is 2.5 plus 1.6 using the trick that I showed you. And its depth is, we're just going to round that off to 50 millimeters. That looks about right. Excellent. Let's erase my notes there. Okay, cool. We're going to add another cylinder real fast. So Shift A for me, cylinder. And then we're going to make this one 52, so it sticks out the top and the bottom, but it's going to be our bore, so it's going to be 2.5. Oh, sorry, 32 vertices is fine. 2.5 in the radius. There we go. So set the radius to 2.5. And we're just doing this. Notice that when we do it this way, the scale of our cylinder remains 1. We're bringing it in at this dimension. Now we got to take this borehole and bore it out. And I'm going to recommend, if you do not have the bool tool installed, go to edit, go to preferences, go to add-ons, look up bool tool and just click the checkbox, and there you go, because then you can come to the edit tab here, bool tool, select the bore, hold down shift and select the external object and hit difference down below, brush boolean difference, and that's going to do a non-destructive. If I go into edit mode, I still have the cylinder. All its parts are there. It's just a Boolean modifier, and if we look at it, boom, we got the Boolean modifier here. So that's good. I then also want to add the little notch on it so that it's like a blowhole. So Shift A, add a mesh cube, and I'm going to scale that up with S. Oh, you know what? I should turn on my screencast keys. Screencast keys on. There we go. Back to my cylinder here. To my square here, move it up, rotate it 45 degrees. You could just type in 4-5 if you didn't know you could do that, and then position it so it's more or less just cutting that off, going towards the front. This is front view, this is side view, and then select the cube, select the pipe, and then again a brush boolean difference on there. That's looking good. Everything's looking great. Now that I have this exactly the way I wanted, this is our generic blowhole. I'm going to turn off the modifiers here because we don't need them for the next step. So turn off the little screen icon on there like that. We'll come back to those later. Okay. Now let's add our displace on here. So displace is also a modifier, and it's got lots of cool uses. In the past, I used it when we made lithophanes. Today we're going to use it on a cylinder. So here we go. Add modifier. Under deform, it's displace, and we can collapse down the Boolean modifiers there. Here it says, okay, well, what are we going to be displacing? Well, we'll hit new, and we got a texture. Which texture? For that, we have to go down on the tab. So in the properties menu at the bottom tab here, it looks kind of like a checkerboard. Click that one. And here we are modifying our textures. Okay, cool. And we can do lots of cool things with textures, but for now, this is an image texture already set up by default. So we can hit open. There we go. And then navigate to where you've downloaded a really cool, and we're going to do the tree on this one. So we got a nice cool little tree. But if you look at this, something's wrong. This is not the way it should be. Well, what's wrong with it is if we go into edit mode, we'll notice we only have points on the top and points at the bottom. It can't displace where there are no points. So we're going to loop cut here. Now I believe loop cut is under the mesh tool here, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's always Control R for me. And then move your mouse to where it's making that circle in it, but then run your mouse wheel up and up and up and up and keep going until you're looking for at what point those top squares start to look like squares. I'm just going to click right there and then click again. 58, let's make it an even 60 here. And if I zoom in and take a look at these, those look pretty square-like. Okay, so now if we exit, we should, wait, that didn't work. It's still not displacing enough. What's wrong here? Well, let's go back to our modifiers tab. I already know what's wrong. I know what's wrong, but I want to lead you guys on this journey. What is the coordinates that we're doing this? So it says local coordinates. Well, that seems awful weird because we want to do it along the UVs. And if you don't know what UVs are, I'm going to watch my screen for just a second. I'm going to explain UVs to you. We already know, if you look in your upper right-hand screen, that we've got an X, Y, and Z here. But if we look at just like one of these squares, okay, this is pretty much a flat object, right? I mean, it looks like a piece of paper, right? And so as a piece of paper, we could say potentially that it's got an X and it's got a Y, right? Although I suppose that's negative Y because it's going down, but nevertheless, it's got an X and a Y, but we already have an X and a Y in the world, so we can't call this X and Y. So instead, we're going to just move up the alphabet, okay? And we're going to say that we've got U and V, and then if we were to do 3 dimensions out there, we'd call this one W, but we don't need W. So this is the U and V map. So U and V is kind of the local X and Y of each one of these points. And notice that U and V, well, I need to erase those now because they're no longer necessary. But notice that each square has its own UV, and those UVs go all different directions all over the place. Just understand that's where UV comes from, and we're mapping where these individual squares go on the X and Y coordinates of our drawing, because yes, our drawing still gets its own X and Y. And how do we do this? Well, we could set up the screen ourselves to do this. We could, resize things. I'll talk about that another time. For now, Blender's default gives us these cool little tabs, and one of them is called UV editing. And if you click on that, you'll see it sets up your screen with your object on the side here, and on the left side here we can look at an image. Okay, and notice how it's got a little square here, and I've got one square selected. If I select more squares, and you probably have more because you didn't do that, notice more squares show up. So if I hit A and select all the squares, ta-da, there's all the squares. How cool is that? All right, let's click the tab on the top of the image editor here. Click the tab next to New and Open, and just choose our tree depth map. I chose the tree, whatever depth map you chose, whatever is in the textures, it will be there, and you can click that and you can see, oh, cool. This is where this is going to line up. Okay, so I can use the same tools for doing this. I just box select it around there by hitting B, and I can hit G and move it into Y. I can scale it well, not Z, Y, until it's about the right size. So we are now doing 2D editing, but we're doing it with the same commands that we've already learned. And that's super cool. So, okay, now if I exit edit mode over here, it's still not right. Well, let's go back over to our our modifier tab, and let's change our coordinate system from local. Click that tab in the displace modifier, change it from local to UV. And now it's displacing along the UVs, and it's looking better, but still not good. See, the problem is, again, it can only displace where it has points. And so we need to add more points. So, okay, fine. Let's add a modifier. Let's add a subdivision surface. Let's grab that subdivision surface and let's move it just above our texture. So it's subdivision surfacing before it does our texture. And I'm going to crank that up to 2, 3. 3 looks good for this one. Probably looks good for you. I'm also going to set the render to match, even though we're not rendering because we're not like that. It's looking pretty good, but it's still not perfect. There's something weird going on with the top and the bottom here. And if I turn off the displace modifier, I'll see, there we go, that our subdivision surface is rounding those corners, and we don't want it to round those corners. We want those corners to be sharp. So go back into edit mode. In edge select mode, which you can get by hitting the button here or by pressing 2, hold down Alt and select one of these edges, and you'll select all of these edges. Now there's 2 ways that we can sharpen these edges with a crease. We can either do it by hitting Shift E and then moving our mouse away from that point, and I kind of like that method because you can see it happening. Or let's go to the bottom here, hit Alt and select all those edges on the bottom there. Okay, if we hit N, we'll pull up the properties panel over here, and we can do it with numbers. And I kind of like this method because it has numbers. I like both the methods, but click on the mean crease and change it to 1. This is a number from 0 to 1. You can actually control. You can do like, well, I want 50% of crease there. You know, you can control your edges this way, but for now we want it 1. Okay, we'll exit edit mode. That looks pretty good. Now let's turn back on the displace modifier, and we're still got a problem because the displace modifier is trying to displace the top and the bottom. I'm going to hit N to close my properties panel. We don't want it displacing the top and the bottom. We need it to displace everything but the top and the bottom. So let's go back into edit mode, and let's select the bottom. So hold down Alt to select all the rings around the bottom. Or if you've already got it selected, you're good. Then hold down Shift and Alt and select all the rings around the top. There we go. And now hit Control I to invert it and select everything else. Actually, hit Control Z, undo that. Let's go to point select mode, vertex select mode. So hit 1 or hit that button. Now hit Control I. There we go. We've got all the points selected except for the top and the bottom. And we are going to tell the displace modifier only to use these points and to ignore the top and the bottom, and that'll solve it. How do we do that? We create a vertex group. So down here in the Object Data Properties tab, click it, and there's vertex groups, and we add a new vertex group, and we can name this displace group. And then we have to remember to hit assign. And now that assigns all the points that we've selected to that newly created displace group. Let's go back to the modifiers tab, and in the displace modifier at the bottom it says vertex groups, and we'll choose our displace group. And when I exit edit mode, notice that the top and the bottom are not being displaced. Now this creates a new problem, because notice that it kind of goes in a little bit, and that's because our top and our bottom here are black, and because they're black they go in as far as they can. But we can fix that. All we have to do is adjust the mid level on our displace modifier. So if we do it down, it'll get thinner. If we do it up, it'll say that the mid level halfway between the highest and the lowest point is at 0. That makes 0 the blackest point be on the thing, and everything going out from there. And maybe you like that. Maybe you like, you know, having the mid-level at 0.5 or even less, although keep in mind that the smaller you make that, the thinner your wall is going to be, and this is possibly too thin to print. So for this one, maybe 0.5 is the minimum that I would go, but maybe you like that little, you know, columny little top. Maybe you want to make it even more by going in and selecting the top face and extruding it up just a little bit, and having something like that. You know, it's your design. you can do what you want. But there we go. We've got that on there. Now, we need to turn those Boolean modifiers back on, but we got a problem. We need to do the Boolean modifiers after this. So we need to grab the two Boolean modifiers, and it doesn't really matter what order they're in, but they need to be below the Displace modifier. Then we can turn them back on. And it worked. Now, if it doesn't work for you, it's probably because you've got too many points. The Boolean modifier likes to freak out when it has too many points to deal with. So what you can do, we'll add another modifier. I'm going to collapse these down. My Displace modifier is doing its job, so I'm going to collapse it down. I'm going to add a modifier that's called Decimate. Okay, Decimate. We use the Subdivision Surface modifier to add more points, and we're going to use the Decimate to take those points away. So before the Booleans, let's do that. So it's going to be Subdivision Surface to add more points, Displace to make them look pretty, then Decimate to reduce the number of points so that the Boolean tools that come after it don't freak out. And we can actually go over to the layout mode. We don't need that anymore. Okay. So how do we do this? Well, we just change the ratio from 1 to something less than 1. And you can play with this number. You can crank it all the way down to 0.1, which is a technical decimation because decimate means 1/10. This particular model seems to have survived that, actually. 1/10 worked okay. I have found that 0.2 usually works pretty good, and 0.3 almost always works good. But it all depends on how high you cranked up the subdivision surface. If I had taken this up to 4, then a 0.1 would still be a very dense mesh on here. In fact, Blender's having a hard time with all of these stacked on top of each other. But see, still a very dense mesh, and I might want to take my thing to less than 0.1, 0.05 or something like that. I don't know. It's going to be chewing on that for a while, but you can see the effect. It reduces the polygon count on it, and that usually makes the Boolean tools happy. Now, back in the Displace modifier, if you think that maybe this thing is too sticky outy, and I'm looking at this and thinking, yeah, that might be too sticky outy, well, then go ahead and decrease the strength, maybe 0.75. Oh, let me turn off the Decimate modifier. That's really slowing my computer down while we're talking here. Are we back? Okay, Decimate modifier off for now. That'll make my computer a lot happier. 0.75, maybe 0.5. Maybe you're looking at yours and it's too subtle. Maybe it needs to have more depth. Well, you can crank that all the way out, 4, 5, whatever works for you. It doesn't really matter. Oops, that broke my Boolean modifier though. Let's turn that back down to 3. Yeah, that did not make my Boolean modifier happy. Let's turn off my Boolean modifiers and see what that did. I think I know what the problem is. I can guess at what the problem is. Yeah, at 5, my mid-level being at 0.5. Okay, well, that was a mistake, but we learn from our mistakes. I think this one actually works at 1 just fine, but I could have fixed that by, let's fix that 5, and then we'll adjust the mid-level up, and we've got a coral reef with this particular one. That's definitely too much. Let's try it. Let's see how 3 works. Nah, 3 is still too much. This one I think works best, maybe at 0.75. That turned out real pretty. Oh, you know what though? I did make a mistake because this needs to be flipped upside down because it's going to be worn like this, displaying all the time. And if these birds are upside down, that's going to look ridiculous. We'll fix that in the UV editor real fast. I'll come over to my UV edits. I'll hit A to select everything, and now I've got these points selected. I hit A to select everything on this side, and then rotate 180 degrees. And now when I exit, ta-da, my tree is upside down, but when it's hanging from your neck, it will be right side up. And you've got another piece of jewelry suitable for display. I kind of like this one. I may add this one to the listing on my mini factory. But there you go. I hope that this has helped. I hope that you were able to follow along and learn from this. And I want to thank you very much for watching my videos. I mean, I appreciate that so much. And if you want to learn more, we'll have more videos up here on the screen that you can check out. And then I will see you next time. But as always, I want to remind you, keep yourself safe. Safety first, because I care about you. And I'll see you next time. Bye.